Welcome back. Today we're diving deep into the story of USS Little Rock, hull number CLG-4, a ship that quietly carried the weight of Cold War tension, technological change, and American naval presence across some of the most sensitive waters on Earth. This is not just the story of steel and missiles, but of sailors, strategy, and a world balancing on the edge between peace and conflict. USS Little Rock began her life in a very different era of naval thinking. She was originally laid down as a light cruiser during the final years of World War II, a time when naval battles were decided by big guns, armor, and formations of ships meeting each other at sea. By the time she was completed and commissioned, the world had already changed. Nuclear weapons, jet aircraft, and guided missiles were rewriting the rules of war, and the U.S. Navy found itself adapting older designs to meet entirely new threats. Instead of remaining a traditional gun cruiser, Little Rock was transformed into a guided missile cruiser, becoming part of the Galveston class. This conversion fundamentally changed her purpose. Where once rows of large-caliber guns would have dominated her deck, she now carried the Talos surface-to-air missile system, a powerful weapon designed to defend carrier groups and fleets from high-altitude bombers and emerging missile threats. This shift symbolized the Navy's transition from the age of big guns to the age of electronics, radar, and missiles. When USS Little Rock was commissioned in 1960, she entered service at the height of the Cold War. The world was divided into two massive power blocks, and the oceans were no longer just highways of trade but potential battlegrounds for global conflict. Every deployment mattered, every radar contact was taken seriously, and every show of force carried political meaning far beyond the horizon. Little Rock quickly became associated with the Mediterranean Sea, one of the most strategically sensitive regions in the world. As part of the U.S. Sixth Fleet, her presence was a constant reminder of American commitment to NATO allies and to stability in a region often shaken by political upheaval. From the coasts of Europe to the waters near the Middle East and North Africa, Little Rock sailed through areas where a single spark could escalate into a wider conflict. Life aboard USS Little Rock was demanding and disciplined. The ship was packed with advanced electronics for her time, including radar systems that required constant monitoring and maintenance. Sailors worked long shifts in cramped spaces, surrounded by the hum of machinery and the glow of screens. Missile crews trained relentlessly, knowing that if the moment ever came, they would have seconds, not minutes, to respond to an incoming threat. At the same time, Little Rock was more than just a weapons platform. She served as a flagship for the Sixth Fleet for many years, meaning she carried senior commanders and their staffs. This role added another layer of importance to the ship. Decisions affecting entire fleets and international relations were sometimes made within her compartments. Secure communications, planning rooms, and command spaces turned the ship into a floating headquarters, where naval strategy met real-world politics. Throughout the 1960s, the Cold War intensified. Crises flared up around the globe, from Berlin to Cuba to Southeast Asia. While USS Little Rock did not always make headlines, her steady presence helped maintain balance. In naval strategy, visibility can be as important as firepower. A guided missile cruiser appearing off a coast sent a clear message: the United States was watching, ready, and committed. Technologically, USS Little Rock represented both innovation and limitation. The Talos missile system was impressive for its time, capable of engaging targets at long ranges, but it also required large launchers, extensive maintenance, and specialized crews. As missile technology advanced rapidly, systems like Talos began to feel bulky and outdated. Newer ships were being designed from the keel up to carry more compact, versatile missile systems, leaving converted cruisers like Little Rock in an awkward middle ground between eras. Despite these challenges, the ship and her crew continued to perform their duties with professionalism. Training exercises, joint operations with allied navies, and routine patrols filled the calendar. For the sailors on board, service meant months away from home, broken only by brief port visits in foreign cities. These moments ashore, walking unfamiliar streets, tasting new food, meeting people from different cultures, became cherished memories that balanced the stress of life at sea. As the 1970s approached, the Navy faced tough decisions. Maintaining older ships with aging systems was expensive, and budgets were finite. New threats demanded new solutions, and the fleet had to evolve once again. USS Little Rock, despite her distinguished service, was approaching the end of her operational relevance. In 1976, after more than a decade and a half of service, USS Little Rock was decommissioned. For many ships, This would have been the quiet end, sold for scrap, cut apart, and remembered only in photographs and logbooks. But Little Rock's story didn't end there. Instead, she was preserved as a museum ship, a rare honor that reflected her historical significance. Today, USS Little Rock is moored in Buffalo, New York, alongside the destroyer USS The Sullivans. Visitors who walk her decks can step directly into Cold War history. They can see the missile launchers, the command spaces, the narrow passageways where sailors once hurried during drills and alerts. Standing aboard Little Rock today, it's easy to feel the contrast between past and present. The radar screens are dark, the missiles inert, and the sea outside is calm. Yet the ship still carries the weight of her mission. She represents a time when the threat of global conflict loomed constantly, and when sailors lived with the knowledge that history could change in an instant. USS Little Rock also tells a broader story about adaptation. She began life as a World War II-era cruiser design, was transformed into a guided missile ship, served through the most intense years of the Cold War, and ultimately found a new role as an educator and memorial. Few ships experience so many transformations while remaining relevant to each era they pass through. For the men who served aboard her, Little Rock was more than a museum piece or a line in a history book. She was home, workplace, and guardian. She carried their routines, their fears, their friendships, and their pride. Reunions held on her decks today are filled with stories of rough seas, tense moments, laughter in cramped mess halls, and the unspoken bond that comes from serving together at sea. In the end, USS Little Rock CLG-4 stands as a symbol of a transitional age in naval history. She bridges the gap between the gun-armed fleets of World War II and the high-tech missile navies of today. Her steel hull witnessed a world redefining itself, one crisis at a time, while her crew carried out their mission far from the spotlight. As we look at USS Little Rock now, preserved and silent, she reminds us that history isn't only made in dramatic battles. Sometimes it's made in long patrols, quiet vigilance, and the steady presence of ships and sailors who stand watch so that others may live in peace. That is the true legacy of USS Little Rock, a ship that served faithfully in one of the most uncertain chapters of modern history.